The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed in the podcast belong solely to the hosts and not the host's past, present, or future employers. Hello, all. Welcome. If you're listening to this, I appreciate your patronage. This is the Breaking Down Security Podcast. We are Mr. Boettcher, Miss Berlin, Amanda Berlin, and Bryan Boettcher, and we are going to be talking this week and next about Sysmon. For those of you who are not aware, Sysmon is a tool, free tool, from Microsoft sysinternals that plugs into the Windows kernel and gives you greater insights into what is going on in the system. Now, most of you might be thinking, well, I've got event logs and event IDs and all that. And, why do I need to have Sysmon? Well, you'll find out that in our podcast this week and next. Ms. Berlin gave a version of this talk, probably the better version, RSA. It was not recorded because RSA, I don't believe, or if it is recorded, it wasn't out yet as of this taping, which was the 24th of July, 2022. And she was planning on giving it a B-Sides Cleveland, but that did not happen because of obvious reasons. You can research that on Twitter yourself. So we sat down. Mr. Boettcher, of course, creator of LogMD, has a vested interest as an incident responder and somebody who loves him some logs. Was very interested in this as well. Has a lot of experience with this. So, I have very little experience with Sysmon, and being a filthy PM, came from the direction of I don't understand why this would be something that people would need. So please tell me and enlighten me, and hopefully everyone else as well. So we spend this week and next talking about Sysmon and how it works and why you would want it to work in your environment and ease of setup. And it has a Linux version. So in case you were unaware of that, you can go and check that out, the Linux version as well. You'll hear in the video or the stream at some point, one of the people on the stream chat was trying to compile it for Linux. Have not heard back as of this recording whether or not it was effective or not. We may find out in future episodes, but there's a Linux version, which is kind of cool. And it's so important to have visibility in your environment and to find these IOCs and how these things can be found. Any weapon or any tool that you have in your arsenal that can make it easier for you to find IOCs is always helpful. So, that's what you're going to hear this week and next. Hope you enjoy, and we'll talk to you again after the end of the show here. For those of you who are here, thank you for coming. We have a number of listeners. I appreciate that. We will talk about Sysmon. We're going to talk about Sysmon right now. That way I can actually post this part of the audio to the podcast, stream. So I'm going to ask a simple question. Ms. Berlin, of course, this was a talk she gave, as she mentioned earlier, at RSA. She was going to give it a B-Sides Cleveland, but was unable to. What is Sysmon?
So it is a part of the sysinternals package, right? It's a tool that adds more data to your Windows logs.
More data? What?
Yeah.
Okay.
So there are, I think, 10 or 11 new
it does the
event
hashes.
ID types. Yeah, there's like 10 or 11 new event ID types that are created that you can't even get no matter what you configure in Windows. So you can get endpoint host DNS logs, which you can kind of get with plain Windows, but it's a huge pain. Like configuring debug DNS logging on a Windows DNS server is horrid. And then you still have to track all this stuff down. So you can actually get good endpoint DNS logs.
Okay.
If you install like Sysmon. So that's
you can get image loads.
Yeah, image loads, like registry changes. Gosh, I know I have a list of them. Let's see.
Name pipes, WMI.
Raw access, file read, process access, pipe event created, pipe connected, file deleted, clipboard change, process tampering. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of different ones that you can get just by installing it.
So why aren't those like typical Windows logs? Why aren't those?
I don't know. I mean,
most of them are. Most of them are. But for example, on the process create, it will give you the hash, whatever hash you want to configure, right?
Yeah.
So if you're looking for a particular hash, you can find it in the logs, in the Sysmon logs, but you can't do that in Windows default or Windows logging.
Yeah. So like Windows 4688 is process creation, right? Well, Sysmon event ID 1, right? Is something like that. I think it's event ID 1 is process creation.
Yes.
So it goes into a different event channel, right? It goes into the actual Sysmon event channel, and not into like your security events.
Okay.
Well, Windows has a ton of different channels.
Oh,
right?
Yeah. So many.
USB channel.
Yeah.
Windows firewall channel. Well, that's in the security channel. But yeah, there's a ton of them.
Right.
You can create your own.
600 something.
600 something.
There's a lot
There's
of
quite a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
2008 R2 is when they introduced I can't remember what it's called. Like
it was basically Vista. Yeah.
After Vista, it was like good logging actually existed. And it wasn't just
before Vista, I mean, there was a huge need in the security community for good logging. And that's why companies like Carbon Black came into being. All right. So they were able to log all this cool stuff, whereas Windows couldn't. And then after Vista, I mean, I wouldn't say they made things like Carbon Black apps obsolete. By default, no. But if you configured it properly, you could almost replace those tools. Now, you wouldn't get the analytics that they provide, obviously, but you would get most of the logging that they provided, which was highly useful, at the time, because you couldn't do any attribution. You couldn't go back and say, okay, how did my machine get hacked? I don't know. Something happened. We got no logs, right?
Right.
But companies like that came in. They had the logs then, right? So they hooked into the kernel, got everything.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anytime that you can have this one installed and have have some kind of incident, you'll be able to find way more. Like you'll be able to find like when that happened.
You can walk through the attack piece by piece.
Easier.
Yeah.
Right.
And so, before or after Vista, if you hadn't configured anything, you could not see anything. Right?
Right.
Oh, my computer was hacked. How? I don't know. It just was.
Yeah.
Right.
So you have to go into forensics mode at that point.
Yeah.
So when you say these are hooking into the kernel, there's additional output even in the most verbose of Windows events that is not being given to you by the OS. So there's additional bits. So the Sysmon hooks into the kernel through like a DLL or something. Is the output still in the Windows event logs, or are they in a separate log somewhere else?
No, it's still in the Windows event log. Oh. It's just in a different channel.
Wait a sec. I didn't hear that.
It's not a library. It's basically a driver.
That's probably
a system driver. Yeah. I can hear everybody.
I can hear Bryan. Yeah, me too.
We can hear you.
Just pretend.
Okay. Yeah, Bryan, just pretend you can hear us. Mm-hmm. We'll just go on.
Not alone.
Yep. That's right. Just say yes. Sysmon came along, provided some enhanced logging, some much configurable logging to suit your needs, right? All right, Amanda, just take over. Just
now.
take over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's, I'm sure everyone that's heard of Sysmon has probably heard of like Swift on Security's config that comes with it,
Yeah.
that you can get for it, right? Because there's like the standard config that you use with Sysmon, and then they made like probably the first real popular Sysmon config.
Right.
We tend to use, it's the modular config, Sysmon modular. It's the one that we recommend by Olaf Hartong, and because it ties everything back to MITRE, which when creating this talk, it was really interesting because you like there are certain tests I was trying to replay in the lab. So like I would go and try and find like a customer that had an incident that we found, and like an actual bad thing happened, created this, detection that fired off. Well, I wanted to replay it in the lab. So I was using like the atomic red team test. So I'd be like, all right, like this is TTP 1218.002. So I would like run that string and like see like what triggered in the Sysmon modular. And it was really weird because it would like show a different TTP number. I'm like, what is going on? What am I doing wrong? Am I running this like attack wrong? Like what is happening? Turns out, because it only has the one additional like thing in the event ID, because it says like techniques or tactics like at the top of the event entry.
Mm-hmm.
And depending on what you have turned on in the modular configuration, it'll start at the top and it'll go, and if it hits one, that's the one it adds to the event ID. Right. So I had like living off the land techniques turned on. So if it hit this more broad TTP entry, it would add that to the event ID.
And it wouldn't even bother with the rest?
Wouldn't bother with the rest of them. So like there was one that I was really trying to get to hit. I'm like, I know this would like this matches the actual XML in the event ID. Like, why is it not adding it? And then I found out like it was triggering higher up. So it was a frustrating like several hours that I spent on that.
Do you ever get it to trigger several of them, or is it?
No, it just does the one.
Weird.
Yeah, so you can't really rely on TTP numbers in that Sysmon modular like event ID. You have to actually rely on like the process name and like this other thing, like that kind of stuff. You can't just assume that you're going to hit the TTP that you want in the config. Like that's interesting.
Frustrating.
So I posted a couple of links in chat about in the Zoom chat for the attack matrix and some of the stuff that Olaf Harthong had done. I'm sure you found that.
That's the one we recommend, is the one by Olaf Hartong.
Okay.
Just because it's really comprehensive. It's like he took Swift on Security's Sysmon config and like just added more stuff to it.
Okay.
And it's updated more often.
Nice. Okay. So the format of your talk was just to inform people of Sysmon, or was it to, show how they can be, finds malware? I mean, what was the overarching?
Yeah, so like I have one example. I had several different examples. So like I did this like threat hunting with Sysmon where we showed how we use standard deviation.
Mm-hmm.
So we plugged in standard deviation of like total destination, like total public IP destinations that processes were accessing. Right. And we looked at it across all of our customers. And like you can see where like our lab really stood out because there was just like this scatter across, like it went from 50 IP addresses up to like 500 million. And then like the process names like that you could roll over. So there was like Zoom and WebEx and Ring Central and like all of these things, like the first 4 or 5. And then like you get down to a little bit further into the standard deviation and it's like notepad.exe.
Nice.
So you can see notepad.exe reaching out to 20 million IP addresses. So that was just like, oh, look, what we did in the lab, like we could like show that notepad.exe like really stood out. So kind of talked about how you can use standard deviation in like different ways to do threat hunting. But if you had notepad.exe reaching out to 20 million IP addresses and it just blended in with the ring centrals and everything like that, like you're never going to find it.
Right.
So it was, yeah, I talked a little bit about that. And then how we do like our detection engineering around all the Sysmon detections we created. So we used, are we still using Vector? It's VECTR. I can actually probably put it in the thing.
I've heard of that, yeah.
Vector.io. And we imported the MITRE ATT&CK framework and kind of went through that because it also ties in like there's a red team section and a blue team section of every TTP, and it gives you the red canary like atomic red team tests that you can run.
Okay.
And you can like save your working notes and see if your solution detected it or not, and like use that as just kind of how to work through the whole map. And like it gives you like this heat map of what you could detect on at the end, which was really cool. Gosh, what else? And then I went through a bunch of use cases. So basically they're just screenshots of a bunch of event IDs. So it's like, here's 4688 standard Microsoft, and then here's event ID 1 through Sysmon. And it shows all of the different things. So it shows like the hash and the parent processes and all of the things that you don't get with just the standard Windows thing.
Right.
And like different stuff that it can catch. So like my favorite one was the one that I did at the end because it kind of combined a whole bunch of stuff. Let's see here. Oh, actually, there's two of them. So the first one that I really liked was ComSpec in the registry. So like when you can call, it's an environment variable called ComSpec. So you can do percent ComSpec percent, and it's just an environment variable that means the command line. So you can call the command line really weirdly, and it's just like a sketchy thing that some malware does. So I showed how that showed up at one of our customers, and it ended up like being this ComSpec, and it was running it ran command line, called PowerShell, did like this encoded PowerShell command. And then I just love looking through encoded PowerShell commands in the command line because you can find a bunch of really weird stuff. And it was like double encoded, and then so it was gzip, it was encoded regularly, and then it was a gzip encoded file, and it ended up just being Cobalt Strike, which was really cool.
Oh,
and
okay.
But these were all like examples that I was looking for when I was creating the talk. It was like, oh, this was 3 months ago at this customer, and I'm like, oh shit, like they had Cobalt Strike running on one of their things, but it detected it, which was great. Cool. So it's like, yeah, it did ComSpec, da 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 da, and they're like, and they like, I went back and looked, and they had actually like stopped it. I'm like, oh, that's good. Like, it's not something that we missed.
Well, so I would say IT admins and security people are not going to be using encoded PowerShell in their own environment. So that would almost be like a red freaking flag.
So it's not, it's less people and more shitty software.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Like I've seen like SCSI driver updates encoded in PowerShell.
What?
And Sentinel-1.
Okay.
For some reason, does weird encoded PowerShell that rerun, like one of the examples I have is like, I found Manifestation has this ASMI bypass tool that he wrote. And I had decoded some PowerShell, and it was like, you know, gosh, what's Matt's last name? Matt, I can remember his last name, but his handle on Twitter's Manifestation, and really good like exploit writer. And it like manifestations, AMSI bypass, and then it lists like all this like weird obfuscated like code stuff in the PowerShell command. I'm like, what is going on? Like, this box is obviously popped. Like, we have to like tell this customer if it didn't alert. And it's just like red team tool after red team tool after red team tool. Mm-hmm. It's like, it's Sentinel-1 for some reason. Like, they're running, I don't know if it's for detection or like detection testing or something, but it was across so many customers that had it, that they just have it in their product somewhere, that it just like runs these red team tools encoded in PowerShell. Like, that's so sketchy.
Right. So I have a question. So Linux Gamer 1977 is asking, won't the forward proxy and firewall catch packets and filter prior to transmitting out the connections?
For what? Forward proxy.
In what way? Are you talking the Windows firewall or your network firewall there, Linux Gamer?
Maybe for that MSI bypass.
Actually, Windows has a firewall that you can configure. It's not on by default.
No one configures it. I can tell you, I've not seen any customer configure it yet.
Right. So you can configure it to deny lateral movement. So if you're getting connection from the same subnet, right, you can deny that, only allow north-south, right?
Try configuring that.
And then in order to get the 5156s, which are Windows firewall logs, you have to configure Windows firewall. Now, you don't have to have any rules. You just have to turn it on. Right. And then you get those network connections.
5156 is just crap. I hate those firewall. I hate those logs with a burning passion.
Well, it does give you the process that initiated the connection. Right. So that's valuable. Who went to this website? Oh, it was explorer.exe or it was word.exe, right? Then you know what process spawned that connection.
How delightfully generic here. It says 5150, the Windows filtering platform has allowed a connection, description of the event, field level events, examples, discuss the event. I'm sorry, I'm looking at the ultimate Windows security guide. So it has like a list of all the event codes and IDs and stuff.
We've had customers like kill their internet connection trying to send us other 5156 logs.
Really?
Yeah. Like sometimes it like that'll kill anything with a spinning disk trying to save those logs.
Could they just send you the stuff that isn't internal? I mean, if there's a connection that's going out.
Yeah, you'd have to manually, depending on what you're using to forward logs, you'd have to filter it out.
Okay.
You can do like, with NXLog, you can do different filters on stuff.
Right. So is this something that most organizations should look at deploying if they're actually serious about logging? I mean, Miss Berlin, you love you some logs. Mr. Boettcher's got LogMD. Would LogMD actually be enhanced by something like this, Mr. Boettcher? Do you suggest people install this when they're running LogMD?
LogMD suggests you configure Windows logs properly. You get the 5156s, you get the 4688s, right? And among other logs. But it also can read Sysmon as well. Mm-hmm. So it's configured to read Sysmon if you want to configure Sysmon. So you get all that enhanced data. And so in our labs, we would have both. So we could see the event ID ones right alongside the 4688s. I mean, you could see them, they're almost the same, right? The ones for Sysmon have a little bit more data in them, but yeah, they are the same.
Mm-hmm.
Oh. Okay.
And they keep on adding more, like new versions of Sysmon come out, because like the last two I mentioned were recent. So like file delete detected and process tampering, I think, are the two that were recent. Maybe it was DNS. I don't know. There was a couple of them that were recent additions, like over the last year.
Right. What does it take to push this out to is this a GPO push? Does this require somebody to put?
Yeah,
okay.
GPO or SCCM or however people push software packages now.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a 3.1 megabyte download.
We have a tool. What's it called? Plashim. I think I have it in my slides. I can add a link. It will, because you can use this with any sim, not just the Blue Mirror stuff. So we found it hard because using NX log is what we have people use to like forward logs, right? With NX log community edition, you can't just take all of the event ID channels because they won't let you. They'll only let you do so many channels with the community edition. If you want to do all of them, you have to do the paid one, right?
Right.
So we have like specific ones that we would want to use. So, but those are different on all operating systems, right? And then it's going to be different on your domain controllers, and it's going to be different on your IIS server, and it's going to be different on this, like it's all different. Trying to manually do that and create groups of this group gets this NX log config and this group gets this one and huge pain in the butt.
Yeah.
So created this PowerShell script that basically downloads and installs the most recent version of Sysmon and NX log, and it scans your Windows Event ID channels, and that's how it populates your NX log config.
Mm-hmm.
And then it uses the Sysmon modular config, and it just does everything for you. And then you just have to put in an IP address of where you want the log shipped to.
Okay. So this
Isn't there an NX log manager where you can control that and you can have groups?
I don't think
unless
you pay. I thought you had to pay for that.
You do.
Yeah.
You do have to pay.
Yes. That's the good, like, if you want to pay for an NX log and get the actual good edition, but most people want the community edition.
Yeah.
So we're cheating with PowerShell.
You're not cheating.
You still can manage it.
Right.
No, we created a tool. You still
How many channels can you forward with Community Edition?
I think it's under 100.
Oh, well then you're golden.
Right?
You don't need 100.
No.
You need like 20 if you want to be really good, maybe 30.
Yeah, and it's not going to pull everything. Yeah, it's not going to pull everything that's on. It just pulls everything that's on from a predetermined list that we have. Like,
yeah, and you break it down to specific event ID, because a channel can have 10 event IDs, but you only need the one.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So again, pardon my ignorance here, because I as I said before the podcast started, or the broadcast started here, I was like, I know nothing about Sysmon. Are these separate logs to what is in the event viewer, or is it just, that Sysmon is installed because the output from the Windows event logs are enhanced, or you can tell because there's additional fields inside because my other
channel.
It's a different channel. Okay.
So, you have like the application log events,
right?
You have system, you have security, and then there's 5 million other ones now.
Mm-hmm.
If you drill down into not application logs, advanced auditing, Sysmon's listed. It's like Windows something like Sysmon.
So yeah, you could see all the Sysmon events in the Windows Event Viewer if you wanted to.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So how do you correlate those? Or do they match up? Does it go, this Sysmon log matches this event ID that we saw in this other log, or do you actually have to do the correlation on the back end?
You don't have to correlate them.
No, you don't have to.
Okay. So does one replace the other? Is the Sysmon better than the actual Windows event logs? So you don't need to collect the Windows event logs, or you still need to do those, or just certain codes?
I think people usually do both, but you don't I don't imagine
you don't need to duplicate. If you're getting event ID 1, you don't need 4688. So in your NX log config, You can just say, okay, don't forward that one, right?
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. I was actually looking. So I was not to digress here, but I was working on some threat intelligence stuff, and I was looking at. I joined a Discord specifically for DFIR stuff, and they have a huge threat intelligence feed. A lot of folks from various organizations, which I can't even imagine who they are, but some of them are law enforcement. Some of them are outside of the United States law enforcement. But they have a huge threat intelligence channel. And I was like, wow, there's a lot of stuff here that I'm missing. And there's a lot of good blog sites that have things like TTPs and write-ups for malware. That I was looking at, like CACBot. Here's one from Cybele, I think is what it's called. There's a new playbook for Cybele, and they have a nice write up on this. I'll put this in the doink. There we go. So Linux Gamer, I don't want to say alphabet soup, yes or no. I will not confirm nor deny or find out if black helicopters are going to come if I do this, but. So there's a lot of sites that I found from curating this over the past few months, just joining this Discord on these various TTPs and a lot of them are Windows based. For Sysmon and for regular event Windows logs, what are your methods of threat intelligence? Is it write-ups like the one that I just posted in our stream chat and our Zoom chat, and you look at those and you build TTPs and things off of those based on what logs would be built from those? How do you build the profile for a CAC bot in this case, and know what needs to be seen or not seen in a syslog build or in a Windows event log to know that CAC bot's inside the system or not? Or am I completely off base here?
No, we have a couple different ways for like internal to the stuff we do. So we have like just the basic, like, well, what's a good example? Like the basic, like the proxy logon stuff that happened with Exchange like last year. It's your parent process name is the process name of the IIS web service, and the parent process name is the IIS web service. So it's w3wp.exe, and the process name is command line or PowerShell.
Okay.
Right. So there's like the easy ones that IIS shouldn't be starting command line or PowerShell. Right. It's fairly easy. It's not just pointing to the proxy logon exploit. Like, that's definitely could be more than just that, but that is one of the TTPs that came from it. And then we have other stuff that actually adds in like threat list data, depending on like the weight we give it. So we don't just like throw threat lists at stuff. We use the DFIR report, and we specifically write detections based on the stuff that's in the reports.
That was it for our discussion this week. If you found value in this, we have 8 years of additional podcasts available on breakingsecurity.com, BRAKEING security.com. You can follow us on Twitter at BrakeSec, which is the broadcast podcast official Twitter. Ms. Berlin can be found at InfoSyster, INFOSYSTIR. Mr. Boettcher can be found at BoetcherPwned, BOETTCHERPWNED. You can follow me at Bryan Brake, BRYANBRAKE. And our Twitch is twitch.tv/BrakeSec. You can send an invite or get an invite by going to discord.gg/BrakeSec. If you want to join our online community there, if you're partial to Slack, we still have a Slack as well. You can send an invite to BrakeSec on Twitter, and we'll get you an invite once you've accepted the code of conduct. Thank you to all of our Patreon supporters, everybody who helps out with our freemium model here. You've heard our podcast. We have the streams on Twitch, which have more audio available. There's about 30 minutes of additional banter and fun and happy and weird talkings that we do on our Twitch stream that maybe didn't make it into the podcast for these 2 episodes. So if you're interested in hearing us talk about solar panels and Bitcoin and a ton of other items, please feel free to send a subscription or subscribe to our Twitch channel and, help us out there. All that money goes to our nonprofit, the InfoSec Education Foundation. So that helps out with, just time and effort building community. We work with other nonprofits to create educational opportunities for underserved and underrepresented groups, as well as just time and effort, getting out a podcast on a weekly basis. So I think that's it. So hope everyone has a great week. Take care of yourselves, take care of others. Mental health is a huge issue. If you find yourself not in a good place, 988 in the U.S. is available for those of you who might need it. And also reach out to a friend or family member if you feel like you can. So, and it's all about taking care of ourselves, because as we're fond of saying, you're the only you have. We'll talk to you again soon.